Throughout the night, the noises gradually got louder and it seemed closer. I tried to ignore it by putting my pillow over my head, but after a few more knocks and stomps, I finally heard one on my door. I jumped and knew why I was hearing these noises. I had turned the light off for a while. I decided to turn on my room light, and I wanted to tell whatever it was time to go away, but it quieted down after a few minutes. I stayed up until my mom got home and told her what happened. She kept her mouth open and her eyes wide the whole time. Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. Today I have 3 of your own scary stories to read to you today, and one of these in particular scared the living daylights out of me. I'll let you guys decide which one it was, but oh my, they're all bad, but like, here's story number 1. In the middle of the school year in 2022, I got my friend to buy a Ouija board. We didn't waste any time using it. We first used it in the locker room of my school and got very random things, so we decided to use it after school and go around town. We went to numerous places, but by the end we went under the main bridge of our town. I thought this would be a good idea because it's only half a block away from the morgue. We went under this bridge, got set up, and we did the usual. And by usual, I mean we warmed up the planchette by moving it around, and we also went over the conditions out loud for any of us to speak to each other. I also made us say things like you are not allowed to touch us or harm us, etc. I was surprised when we kept getting things faster than usual. Here's some of the things we got. Gender, it went to no. Do you like jokes? Yes. Age? No. Have you talked to someone through a Ouija board before? No. Were you lonely? Yes. Name. Random letters. We got all letters except for E, I, O, and U. When I asked if it was a demon or spirit, I said to go to yes for a demon and no for a spirit, and it went to yes. Immediately I ended it. I wasn't interested in getting myself or my friend in trouble. We then used it about a week later in the locker room, and we didn't expect for this to happen. We got started and then began to talk to someone. My friend pointed out that the thing was making jokes a lot, just like the one under the bridge. My friend asked if it was the same thing from under the bridge we had talked to the week prior, and to my horror, it said yes. I was scared shitless, to say the least. The thing was following us and wanted to continue the conversation. Something I'd forgotten to mention was that there were 2 other friends in the room with us, but they weren't participating, just watching. All of my friends said not to end it, even though I was scared, and I listened to them. To my surprise, the conversation was going nicely, and we talked like we knew each other pretty well, but I ruined the conversation by asking if it was following us because it wanted to hurt us. Again, the planchette moved to yes. I panicked and moved the planchette too quickly, so it flipped off the board. My friends that were watching left, and I was crying. I was scared of the Ouija board, so everything in this situation was making it worse. After a while, me and my friend started yet again, and the first thing I asked was if it was lying. It said yes. I wondered if it was lying about that too, so then I asked if it was jealous that others were in the room, and it was. We continued, and we talked for a long time, even joking around and asking if it liked our jokes, and it did. After a while, we came up with a name for it, which was Bestie. After that, when we used the board, all we got to do was talk to Bestie. Nothing else could come through, and if it did, it wouldn't last long. When we came up with the assumption that it was blocking everything, I then said something like, I appreciate you, but I don't want to just talk to Bestie all the time, only once in a while, and I wish I didn't. After that, the board never worked again. One night we left it under the bridge because we couldn't take it home, and someone or something tore it up. I would like to say that's the end, but it's not. Another thing happened that made me have a little panic attack, but I'm pretty sure it was Bestie. It keeps giving me and my friend signs that it's not gone, like tapping loudly around the house or moving things. I'm not sure about my friend, but I've let it know that I haven't forgotten it, and sometimes leave out letters about my day and say it's to Bestie. The paper's never where I leave it. Okay, I have thoughts. So they did say in this that they were very young at the beginning when they were given their little introduction. I usually don't include those, but listen, I'm hoping they see this, and if you are watching this, this is directly to you. I know you said you were very young in your little introduction. I usually don't include the introductions because they seem more like personal, but you said you're very young. That's a very bad sign. There is a entity, if you will, that lurks around Ouija boards, and for lack of better words, this guy is bad news. Once you contact him, he is very possessive over you, will not let you speak to anyone else through Ouija boards, and he becomes very attached to you very fast. He is not positive, nothing good comes out of it, and he is almost impossible to get rid of. Coming from me, who was careless using a Ouija board for the first time and can still not use one normally. Years later, I've had horrifying experiences anytime I've touched any board. I can't even use them anymore, which stinks because I'd love to. So that is not your bestie. Don't leave out letters because that could be seen as offerings. Don't interact with him. Don't do anything like that. That is not a friend. That's very scary, actually. Don't let him have more of an attachment than he already has. I would suggest not using a board for a while, and if you do use a board, wait until you're much older and you're, well equipped to know the rules and how to cleanse boards and things like that. But that's not good. Be very careful. That's very scary. And yeah, just please don't use a board for a while, at least. All right, story number 2. When I was around 14, I lived in a smaller town in Texas. My town was known for being bright at night. It was rare that I was left home alone, but my mom had to work and my father wasn't living with us. I think this was my second time being home alone. My house was always bright because of the large windows, but my mother always said to leave the lights on and made the excuse that our power goes out easier when the lights are off. That's what everyone else in the town also did. When we went to bed, we closed and locked the door if we wanted the lights off. I was allowed to use the house phone to call friends, so that's what I did. I was on the phone for around 2 hours when it got dark and my phone line kept cutting out. I blamed it on the phone and decided to just head up to my room after hanging up the phone and play some CDs. My mom wasn't supposed to be home until late that night, or about 1 in the morning. So when I heard noises coming from downstairs, I was pretty scared. I was one of those kids that got scared of everything, so I called my mom, but was met with a voicemail. After a while of trying to call my mom, I went to try and solve the problem myself. I went downstairs and then immediately noticed the kitchen light was off. I cursed myself for being so dumb and then ran back upstairs. Just a few days before that, I was staying with my dad and he always harassed me to turn the lights off, so I'm still in that habit. I tried to go to sleep, but the noises weren't stopping. Throughout the night, the noises gradually got louder and it seemed closer. I tried to ignore it by putting my pillow over my head, but after a few more knocks and stomps, I finally heard one on my door. I jumped and knew why I was hearing these noises. I had turned the light off for a while. I decided to turn on my room light and I wanted to tell whatever it was time to go away, but it quieted down after a few minutes. I stayed up until my mom got home and told her what happened. She kept her mouth open and her eyes wide the whole time. She told me to stay up and she would go over to my neighbor's house with me. We stayed the night over there and she never talked about it again. But what I think that was is that there was something that was waiting for you to turn off the light. That sounds so much like the movie Lights Out. Do you guys remember that? That definitely sounds like something was lurking around in the dark. That is so scary. But what stood out to me was that they mentioned that the town was super bright. It was a bright small town in Texas. So is this a house thing or is this a town thing that everyone knows? This sounds like the plot to a great scary movie and I kind of want to write a book about it. I don't know. That sounds so scary. All right, this is our final story and it's on the longer side, so that's cool. My nickname is Bex and I've lived in Georgia my whole life. However, through my early to mid-teens, my mother, grandmother, and I would go to my great uncle and aunt's home in Florida every summer. We would grill, hang by the pool, go to the beach, and play cards. By all accounts, it was a great time. The only problem being their home. This home was a rental property on a little residential street. I believe it was an older home, and being a kid, I have no real concept of how old this home was. It was a nice house with a sunroom and an in-ground pool. It was well taken care of, but something always felt odd about the house. I hated being alone in it, not because there was a negative feeling, but because I frequently felt watched. I would purposefully avoid being in the home alone. Everyone was in the pool, well, so was I. Everyone playing cards on the back porch, so was I. I would force myself to wait to go to the bathroom so I could go inside when someone else was in the home. I was just creeped out by the ever-present eyes on me sensation. When I was getting into my mid-teens and also the end of my great uncle and aunt's renting of the home, I was getting into the paranormal as well as true crime. I started watching a lot of reality TV ghost shows. Ghost Adventures, Hunters, Paranormal State, listening to true crime stories, Unsolved, the lot. When my mother had relayed this to my great uncle, wanting me to have a good time on vacation, elected to tell me a story. He hadn't shared the story with me before about the home we were staying in. Apparently, in 1993, a young couple and their toddler son lived in this home. The mother went missing. There was a lot of people calling foul play on the situation, and the young boy had asked questions to the effect of, "Why did Daddy put Mommy in the trunk?" Or "Why wouldn't Daddy wake up Mommy?" But due to the lack of evidence and her car being parked in the nearest airport lot, the police were forced to deem this case as a missing person. My great uncle told me that he firmly believed that the man who we were renting this home from had ended the life of his wife and buried her elsewhere. But like I said before, there wasn't enough evidence to prove it. It was an interesting story and I enjoyed it, though it was sad. But I didn't put much stock into it. My great uncle loves to scare me with such scary interests, and I was used to this kind of thing. I assumed that this was just a scary campfire story that my uncle had made up. That night, everyone had gone to bed, and my great aunt and uncle were in their room, my grandmother in the guest bedroom, and my mom and I were sharing the futon in the sunroom. My mom and I frequently stayed up late, so we were the last to awake in the house. I finally plugged in my phone and rolled over on my side facing the wall to the back of my mom to try and get some sleep. When I turned over, she had still been reading an article on her phone. I shut my eyes, trying my best to get some sleep when I started to hear humming, then fingers lightly grazing my hair, petting me. I assumed this was my mom, and after at least a full minute of this, I was annoyed. I was a teenager and I just wanted to go to sleep. This wasn't helping. I turned to face my mother and my breath caught in my throat. She was asleep. Phone still on, barely in her hand, on her chest, and her arm hanging off the side of the futon. Yet there was humming and petting. I quickly squeezed my eyes shut, whispering, "Please go away," repeatedly for what felt like an eternity, but was probably less than 45 seconds. The humming and petting sensation went away. I laid awake for a while and I guess eventually went to sleep. The rest of the time I stayed there, I insisted upon sleeping in the living room with the light and TV on. I didn't share this encounter with any of my family members. I knew they wouldn't believe me. They would tell me I had a nightmare. Luckily for me, this was the last summer we visited this home as my great uncle and aunt moved into a new home they were actually able to buy at least 2 hours away from the old rental. Well, a few years later, I'd forgotten about this incident and we were down visiting my family once again, but in their new home. My aunt brought up that my great uncle would have to attend a trial and take the stand. Intrigued, I questioned, what for? What kind of trial? Come to find out, the only reason my aunt and uncle moved had been because the toddler son from the couple in the story had gained possession of the old home. He wanted to renovate and sell the property. While renovating the home, human remains had been found. Upon further investigation, it was his mother's remains. My uncle had been called to testify as he had put down a patch of cement for an outdoor shower beside the house. He only dug enough to have a flat patch, but had he dug deeper, he would have found the body. The husband has now been sentenced to life in prison. I firmly believe now that I had an interaction with the young mother who was taken from her little boy too soon. I don't believe she ever intended to scare or harm me, and that she was just taking care of a child in her home since she was unable to see her own. Okay, I've already read that once and I'm like tearing up again. I was sobbing the first time I read it. Well, sorry to leave you guys on such a sad note, but that is all for today. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.